Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The automatic doors of St. Francis General Hospital slid open with a soft hiss, and I took a deep breath, stepping inside. My shoes clicked softly against the polished linoleum floors as I glanced around, taking in the bustle of activity. Nurses, doctors, and orderlies moved in a steady stream, their faces set with purpose. I clutched the strap of my bag a little tighter, feeling the weight of anticipation and nerves settling in my chest. This was it. My first day at one of the most prestigious hospitals in the city. I should have been excited, but instead, my stomach twisted with a mix of anxiety and something else, an awareness of the unspoken challenge I was about to face. Being the new nurse wasn't the problem. Being the black nurse at St. Francis was. I approached the reception desk, where a middle-aged woman with silver-rimmed glasses sat typing on her computer. Her name tag read Janice. I smiled, trying to shake off the nervousness that clung to me. "Good morning. I'm Holly Chesterton, the new nurse starting today," I said, keeping my voice steady and professional. Janice didn't look up. Her fingers kept clacking away on the keyboard, the sound a constant reminder that I wasn't exactly her priority. "Wait over there," she muttered, nodding towards a row of stiff chairs by the wall. I hesitated for a moment, her dismissiveness catching me off guard. Was it the new nurse treatment or something more? Shaking it off, I made my way to the chairs and sat down, my hands folded in my lap, my nerves gnawing at me. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. My eyes darted around, watching the staff as they moved in and out of the ward. Nurses walked by, some throwing quick glances in my direction, their faces unreadable. It felt like I was being assessed, though no one said a word. Finally, I spotted Dr. Eric Chapman approaching. His white coat was pristine, his hair slicked back in a way that screamed authority. He didn't need to say anything to command the attention of the room. Everyone seemed to step aside for him. I stood up as he neared, ready to introduce myself. "Dr. Chapman, I'm Holly Chesterton. There." "I know who you are," he interrupted, barely glancing at me. "Follow me. We're already behind schedule." I blinked, my hand still awkwardly half extended for a handshake. He didn't take it, didn't even pause long enough for a proper introduction. Instead, he turned on his heel and strode off down the hall. I hurried after him, the rapid click of my shoes the only sound in the tense silence between us. As we walked through the corridors, I couldn't help but notice how the other staff reacted to Dr. Chapman. Nurses smiled politely, their eyes flicking from him to me. It was a subtle thing, the way their smiles faded when they looked at me, but I felt it. My skin prickled under their scrutiny. "I'll expect you to handle your assignments efficiently," Dr. Chapman said abruptly, not bothering to look back as he spoke. "I run a tight ship here. No room for mistakes." "Of course," I replied, keeping my tone even. "I'm ready to do my best." He finally stopped in front of the nurse's station, turning to face me for the first time. His eyes, cold and assessing, swept over me like I was a puzzle he wasn't interested in solving. "We'll see about that," he said curtly. Before I could respond, a tall, thin nurse with short brown hair approached us. She wore a name badge that read Linda Carver. She glanced at Dr. Chapman and then at me, her expression neutral but distant. "Linda, this is Nurse Chesterton," Dr. Chapman said, as if reading from a checklist. "She'll be working under you today." Linda gave me a tight-lipped smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome to St. Francis," she said, her tone flat. "We're glad to have you." "Thank you," I replied, forcing a smile. "I'm looking forward to getting started." Dr. Chapman nodded once and then walked off without another word, leaving me standing with Linda, who looked at me like I was a task she wasn't in the mood to complete. "Let's get you situated," she said, turning toward the station. "We've got a busy day ahead." I followed her to the desk, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in my gut. This wasn't just a job. It felt like a test, and I wasn't sure what I was being tested for, but I had the distinct feeling that whatever it was, I was already failing. The second day was worse than the first. As soon as I walked into St. Francis, I could feel the cold distance from the staff, the kind that nod at you even in a crowded room. I headed straight for the nurse's station, hoping to get my assignments for the day and maybe start fresh. Linda was already there, flipping through a chart. "Morning," I said, offering a smile. She glanced up, her eyes barely meeting mine before she went back to the chart. "You're on Ward C today," she said flatly. "Heavy workload. Be prepared." Ward C. The phrase hit like a punch. Everyone knew Ward C was for the most critical, labor-intensive cases. The patients there were often neglected because most nurses couldn't handle the workload. I wasn't even surprised. "Okay," I said, my voice calm, even though I could feel my frustration building. "I can handle it." She looked at me then, as if weighing my words. "We'll see," was all she said before turning her back to me, dismissing me once again. I swallowed hard, gripping the handle of my medical bag tighter. I couldn't let this get to me. Not yet. Walking down the hallway to Ward C, I passed a group of nurses standing by the coffee machine. Their conversation halted as I approached, eyes darting toward me. One of them, a tall woman with a sharp bob haircut, whispered something to the others. A couple of them laughed. The sound of it echoed in my ears as I walked by, but I kept my eyes forward. Ward C was as busy as Linda had hinted. The moment I stepped inside, I was greeted by the sight of beeping monitors, patients groaning in pain, and nurses rushing from bed to bed. I set my bag down, adjusted my scrubs, and jumped right into work. The first patient, Mr. Henley, was a frail man with tubes running in and out of him. His breathing labored. His chart was thick with notes. I could tell he was in bad shape. As I reached for his arm to check his vitals, I heard a voice from behind me. "What's she doing in here?" I turned to see Nurse Megan, one of the senior nurses, standing in the doorway. Her hands were on her hips, her gaze fixed on me like I didn't belong. "I'm handling Mr. Henley's care today," I replied, keeping my tone professional. "Did Linda assign you to this?" "Because Ward C isn't exactly for beginners," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. The way she said beginners felt like a punch to the gut, as if my years of training meant nothing here. "Yes, she did," I answered, refusing to back down. "I'm perfectly capable of handling it." Megan smirked, looking me up and down like she didn't believe a word I said. "Good luck with that," she muttered before turning and walking away, her shoes clacking loudly against the floor. I tried to shake off the interaction, but it stayed with me as I worked through my rounds. Every patient was more critical than the last, every task more demanding. Yet, as the hours passed, I kept up. I knew my job. I knew how to care for these people, and I wasn't going to let their prejudice stop me from doing it. But the hostility wasn't just from the nurses. As I approached Mr. Anderson, an elderly patient with thinning hair and a sharp scowl, I could already feel the tension rising. "You're my nurse today?" he asked, his voice rough and cold. They couldn't find someone else. I kept my face neutral, though his words stung. "I'm here to take care of you, Mr. Anderson," I replied. "Let's check your vitals." As I reached for the blood pressure cuff, he snatched his arm away, glaring at me. "I don't want you touching me," he spat, his eyes burning with disdain. "Get someone else. I won't be treated by." His words trailed off, but the meaning was clear. I took a deep breath, my hands steady despite the anger simmering inside me. "I understand your concerns, but I'm your nurse today, Mr. Anderson. I'm here to help you." He scoffed, turning his head away, his refusal clear. I knew there was no point in arguing. With a tight smile, I stepped back, noting his refusal in the chart and moving on to the next patient. Inside, though, the weight of it all was starting to press down. The rest of the day followed the same pattern: disdainful looks, condescending remarks, and constant judgment. By the time my shift ended, my legs ached, and my spirit felt bruised. The hum of the hospital lights buzzed above me as I made my way to the break room, my head pounding from the endless stream of patients. It wasn't just the workload wearing me down, though I was used to that. It was the looks, the whispers, the moments that dug beneath the skin and festered there. As I reached for the coffee pot, my hand shook slightly. My shift had barely begun, and already I had been brushed aside twice. The first time, it was Dr. Chapman as usual. He'd walked into the room with a group of interns, asking for a nurse to assist with a patient's chart. I had stood right there, chart in hand, but he looked past me, waving over a younger nurse, Melissa. It didn't matter that she had just started 2 weeks ago, while I'd been running these halls for months. She was white. She fit his idea of competence. "Can't take it personal," I whispered to myself, pouring a small cup of coffee. But the words felt hollow. The real trial came with Mr. Anderson later that afternoon. He had been one of the most difficult patients in Ward C, ever since I was assigned to him. Every time I entered his room, the temperature seemed to drop, and the hostility was thick enough to cut. When I walked in to check his vitals that day, he was sitting up in bed, glaring at me the moment I stepped through the door. His eyes were cold, sharp, like they were trying to carve into me. "Back again, huh?" he muttered, his voice low and edged with disdain. I kept my expression neutral. "I'm here to take your vitals, Mr. Anderson. How are you feeling today?" "Feeling like I don't want you touching me," he snapped, pulling the blanket tighter around himself. "I told them before, I don't want you as my nurse." I paused, holding my breath for a moment before replying. "I understand your feelings, but I'm here to help you recover. I'll just check your blood pressure, and then—" "Don't talk to me like I'm some charity case," he barked, his face reddening with anger. "You think I don't see what's going on? They send you in here because no one else wants to deal with me, isn't that it? A nurse like you." The last sentence hung in the air, a bitter taste on my tongue. I knew what he meant. I'd heard it enough times in my life, but it never got easier to swallow. "I'm here because I'm qualified to be here," I said calmly, though my hands clenched at my sides. "Now, if you let me do my job, I'll make sure you're getting the care you need." "I want your care," he sneered. "I don't need some nurse from the bottom of the barrel messing with me." His words stung, sharper than I expected. I had faced hostility before, but something about the way he said it, the way he spat it, like I wasn't even human, made me pause. My chest tightened, but I refused to let it show. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said, my voice even though inside I was shaking. He turned his head away, refusing to meet my eyes as I moved to check his blood pressure. The silence between us was heavy, filled with unspoken tension. His arm trembled slightly as I placed the cuff around it, but he didn't resist this time. Maybe he had finally realized that his words wouldn't break me. Once I finished, I stepped back and noted his readings on the chart, my hand steady despite the whirlwind inside me. As I left the room, I could feel his eyes burning into my back. Back at the nurse's station, I sat down for a moment, letting out a slow breath. The words he'd thrown at me were still fresh in my mind, each one replaying in a loop. But I couldn't let them get to me. I was here to do a job, and I was damn good at it. Megan, the senior nurse, sauntered past me just then, glancing at my chart. She smirked, clearly overhearing some of the earlier exchange. "Tough crowd today, huh, Holly?" she said, her tone mocking. I didn't bother responding. I just went back to my work. I didn't need their approval. I knew who I was. And no matter how many times they tried to push me down, I wasn't going anywhere. I sat at my locker in the break room, staring blankly at my reflection in the small mirror I'd taped to the inside of the door. My face looked drained, the dark circles under my eyes deepening each day. The weight of the last few weeks felt like a heavy stone on my chest, pressing harder and harder until it was difficult to breathe. I had always known nursing wouldn't be easy. It was a job that demanded resilience, patience, and an unwavering sense of compassion. But this was different. The cold shoulders, the whispered slurs, and the constant feeling of being an outsider. Every morning I would put on my scrubs and tell myself, today will be better. But as each day ended, I felt smaller, invisible. Megan walked into the room, her usual smug expression in place. She glanced at me and then at her watch. "Late lunch today, huh? Guess they keep the difficult patients for you." Her words were like little barbs, always meant to sting, but delivered with such casual indifference that I often wondered if she even realized how much they hurt. I forced a smile, though it didn't reach my eyes. Yeah, something like that, I muttered, reaching for my sandwich that I hadn't touched yet. Megan leaned against the counter, looking at her phone. Honestly, Holly, I don't know how you do it. Dealing with Anderson and all the others. I'd have lost it by now. But then again, she shrugged, her voice dripping with insincerity. Maybe you're used to that kind of treatment. Her words cut through me, sharper than any of the comments I'd endured from patients. I bit down on the inside of my cheek to keep from saying something I'd regret. Instead, I stood up, my appetite gone. As I walked out, her voice followed me. You sure you're cut out for this? I didn't turn around. I couldn't. If I did, I might scream. Back in the hallway, I leaned against the wall for a moment, closing my eyes. The tears were there, just beneath the surface, threatening to spill over, but I wouldn't let them. Not here. Not in front of them. My mother's voice echoed in my mind, from a conversation we had before I started this job. You're strong, Holly. You've been through worse. Don't let them break you. She had always been my rock, reminding me of the legacy of resilience we carried. But standing in the sterile hospital corridor, the walls closing in on me, I felt anything but strong. I forced myself to take a deep breath. I had a job to do, and no amount of prejudice was going to stop me from doing it. But as I returned to the ward, the familiar feeling of exhaustion crept in, deeper this time. It wasn't just physical fatigue, it was emotional. The constant fight to prove I belonged, to prove I was good enough. No, better than good enough was wearing me down. I passed by the nurse's station, catching a glimpse of Dr. Chapman giving instructions to a group of interns. He didn't even glance in my direction as I walked by. It was like I was invisible to him, just another face in the crowd. I reached Mr. Anderson's room again, bracing myself for another round of hostility. As I stepped inside, he glared at me from his bed, the scowl on his face a permanent fixture. But this time, I felt too tired to even care. Back again, he muttered, but there was no venom in his voice today. Maybe he could sense my exhaustion. I'm here to do my job, Mr. Anderson, I said quietly, avoiding eye contact as I checked his IV. For once, he didn't argue. He simply watched me in silence, and for a fleeting moment, I wondered if he realized the toll his words had taken. As I finished up and turned to leave, his voice stopped me. Why do you even bother? I paused, my hand on the door, debating whether to respond. Finally, I spoke, my voice low but steady. Because it's my job, and I care about my patients, no matter what they think of me. The silence that followed was heavy, and I left without another word. But as I walked back down the hall, the weight of everything pressed down even harder. And for the first time since I started at Street Francis, I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep going. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the hospital floor as I finished my rounds. I was about to head back to the break room when a rush of urgent footsteps echoed through the hallway. A stretcher appeared, wheeled in by paramedics, with a man in a suit lying motionless, his face pale and pained. Car accident, one of the paramedics called out as they pushed the stretcher toward the emergency room. Fractured both legs, possible internal injuries. I stepped forward instinctively. As they wheeled him past, I caught a glimpse of his face. He looked familiar. Then I saw his ID badge clipped to his jacket. Nathaniel Graves, government official. The weight of that name hit me. Mr. Graves was a high-ranking official, one of the most influential voices in the fight for diversity and equal rights. And like me, he was Black. His presence in this hospital, a place where I had fought so hard for respect, felt like a strange twist of fate. Chesterton, you're assigned, Dr. Chapman said flatly, handing me the chart without even glancing at me. His indifference was routine by now, but I didn't let it deter me. I nodded and hurried after the paramedics. In the emergency room, the team worked quickly to stabilize Mr. Graves. I took my place by his side, checking his vitals, adjusting his IV drip. Despite the chaos around us, my hands moved with a practiced calm. This was where I felt most in control, where my skills as a nurse shone through the noise of prejudice and exclusion. As I tended to him, Mr. Graves opened his eyes, groaning in pain. His gaze met mine, and for a moment, recognition flickered in his eyes. You're the nurse, he murmured, wincing as the doctors examined his legs. Yes, sir, I said softly, adjusting the pillow beneath his head. You're going to be okay. We're taking good care of you. For the next few hours, I stayed by his side, monitoring his condition, ensuring he received the best care possible. Despite the pain, Mr. Graves occasionally glanced at me, his expression thoughtful. He didn't say much, but I could tell he was observing, processing. A week passed, and Mr. Graves remained under my care. His recovery was slow, but steady. On the day he was set to be discharged, he called me into his room. "Nurse Chesterton," he began, his voice still weak but determined. "I want to thank you for everything you've done." I smiled, brushing off the praise. "Just doing my job, sir." "No," he said firmly, sitting up straighter. "You've done more than that. I've watched how you handle things here, how you manage despite the challenges." I froze, unsure how to respond. Did he mean what I thought he did? Mr. Graves continued, his eyes sharp. "I've been informed about the way you've been treated here. It's come to my attention that your colleagues have been disparaging you because of your skin color." My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't sure how to respond. He had seen through it all, the subtle and overt signs of discrimination I had endured. The fact that someone of his stature, a black man who understood the weight of systemic prejudice, knew what I'd been going through was both humbling and empowering. "I know what it's like to be overlooked, to face systemic barriers," he continued, his voice steady. "I've spent my career fighting them, and I can see you've been dealing with more than just patient care." My throat tightened, but I forced myself to stay composed. "It's nothing I can't handle, sir." He shook his head. "That's not the point. You shouldn't have to handle it. Not alone." There was a pause, the weight of his words settling in the room. "I'm going to make a few calls," Mr. Graves said, his tone firm. "This hospital needs to recognize what they have in you, and that starts with a promotion. You deserve to be treated with the respect and dignity that comes with your skills." I stared at him, stunned. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied, smiling faintly. "Just keep being the incredible nurse you already are. The rest will follow." The next day, Dr. Chapman called me into his office. His usual air of superiority seemed shaken. He cleared his throat awkwardly. "Chesterton, I've been informed. Well, it seems Mr. Graves has spoken very highly of you. You're being promoted, effective immediately." The shock must have been evident on my face, because Dr. Chapman quickly added, "This was a decision from above." I nodded, biting back a smile. For the first time since I had stepped into Street Francis, I felt like things were about to change. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't invisible anymore.